I'm Wazid Khan, and today we have the 62nd edition of the PCB podcast and a very special guest, Mike Hesson, the head coach of the Pakistan white ball cricket team. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Start off straight away. Just your journey. How do you become a professional coach, and how does that encumber through your life? What started that off?
Look, I went to England as a player coach when I was sort of finishing university or partway through. And I was, pretty keen to be an opening batsman and make my career that way. I had a pretty serious back injury when I was about 19, 20, sort of a degenerative one. So I was really lucky. I was made director of cricket when I was 21 at Otago, which is a first-class team. I was 20 years younger than the next one. There was only 6 in the country. And that kind of happened by accident. I loved coaching, my time in England and coaching underage teams, but I didn't necessarily think that was going to be a long-term career. I was sort of hoping I'd get back to playing at some stage, but I loved it. And so, from there, things have progressed. I've been lucky enough to work in a number of different countries and work with some fine players. So, that's where I get my buzz. I get my buzz from, helping players achieve what they want to achieve.
Now, lots of people ask this question, especially in Pakistan and maybe world over. How difficult is it to not having played top-level cricket and then be able to coach at the elite level?
Look, I think players decide if you're valuable or not. They're the ones that decide, can this person help me achieve what I want to achieve? And they ultimately decide if you add value. So for me, I think a lot of, really fine players can share a lot of experiences. Some are very good coaches. Some probably struggle to understand those that are struggling, because they were so good. Yeah. So I think the thing I've got empathy for each and every player. I know, what they've gone through to achieve what they want. And it's all about, for me, coaching is very different than playing. It's about trying to maximise talent. It's not necessarily about telling them about the great innings that I played during my time.
That sort of question will appear. I'm just warning you, the media here will always look at that.
I've had that for many years. I mean, I coached New Zealand. I hadn't, without international experience. And like I said, players decide. They work out very quickly if you can add value or not. I've been lucky enough to coach some of the best players in the world and build those relationships with them. And I think in many ways, they can share things with you more than, if you're potentially a competitor. And this job is a coaching job. It's not a playing role.
Just on Pakistan team, you coached for New Zealand against Pakistan World Cup and a series. What do you make from the outside looking in? What do you make of the Pakistan team?
Now, or you mean previously?
Previously, when you.
Look, I think Pakistan have always been really good front runners. So I think when they're ahead of the game, they know when to push, and they can apply a lot of pressure. I always found with New Zealand, it's about putting the side under pressure and then seeing how they respond. And that's, that was always our challenge. Once we were able to do that, we always felt we could get on top. And we were lucky enough to have some pretty good success during that time. But obviously that's one of the areas I'm well aware of and trying to turn that around.
So growing up, did you watch Pakistan cricket? Do you have any sort of superstars or players that you looked up to or sort of idolized?
Oh, look, I remember the '92 World Cup very clearly. That was, during my era.
Heartbreak for you.
It was heartbreak for us. We once again played some good cricket, and then not only got knocked over in the last round, but then we know what happened. Inzi and Mohan Khan and so forth. And I remember Wasim Akram in the final against England. The reverse swing and a lot of highlights from watching Pakistan grow up. I love the game, so I study the game.
Now, as a head coach, you've obviously got a lot of experience. You've coached almost all the world around. Could you sort of, in your own words, and sort of summarize, or is it possible to summarize your coaching philosophy as a head coach?
Oh, look, I guess I go back to trying to maximise talent, and I think that that's the role of any head coach, and I guess I do that by building relationships. So I believe you can only coach a player once you actually understand the path they've been through. coaches at any level, and particularly Pakistan, have been exposed to lots of different coaches. So, they've been told lots of different things, they've tried different things, but they've ended up where they are for a reason. So I see my philosophy as trying to understand that and add value around that, rather than try and dictate necessarily the way they have to play.
So is it a more holistic approach where you look at 360, look at every other aspect, not just how he's playing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think once you've got that relationship, you understand what makes them tick, where they're trying to get to, the path they've already travelled. Only then I think you can add value. And yeah, it is a holistic approach. It's probably more it's probably more an individual approach than necessarily, we all have to do it my way.
Now with New Zealand, 2012 to 15, they turned the white ball cricket team became a real superpower, and also turned the test team around too. What do you think was the secret behind that turnaround?
I think team culture. I think making sure that players were really clear around, what was expected of them. We also, when I took over in 2012, there was a lot about self-preservation, in terms of not sure whether that's been the team or not. Often, personal milestones were probably seen more important than team results. So, we spent a lot of time, building that senior player group so that they would help drive the culture. And it was very much a team first sort of mentality. So, I think once you've got everyone, heading in the same direction, you can achieve some great things.
Where do you stand on personal milestones, or you don't value them at all?
I wouldn't say I don't value them. I think, personal milestones are important if they help the team win the game of cricket. There has to be context to them. I think, personal milestones will just happen if you're trying to do the right thing by the team, and then the team will celebrate them.
Especially white ball cricket, there's a lot of discussion especially with T20, when sort of a batter gets close to, say, a 50, 100, and it just slows down a little. How do you clamp down on it? Do you actually go out and tell him that this is not acceptable?
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, it's more, it becomes pretty apparent to everybody that, that's what's happening. And it's been happening for years. It's certainly not, one team more than another. But it's just understanding that what does the team require from me at that time? And if we need 14 and over, a single down the ground is not going to make a big difference. If you're looking to hit it somewhere for 4, that's fine, and you can't, no problem. But if we can tell you're not picking the bat up and you're just trying to bunt it for 1 to get your milestone, those milestones don't really matter, if you end up losing by 20. So for us, it's all about context. It's about doing whatever you can to help the team win the game.
We just had a game against Bangladesh, and there was a stat where none of the batters played 35 deliveries, but you still got to 200. Is that the sort of thing that you're looking at moving forward, being able to still get to a huge total with all the players contributing, or making sure that they bat in a similar manner?
Look, I think you have to have a depth of batting to know that if you lose early wickets, you can still play at a tempo to get you above par. And that's the reality. If you don't bat deep, then you lose a couple of wickets. You do have to find a period of consolidation. So it is around selection and making sure you've got a side that can allow you to play a certain way. But ultimately, we still want our top 3 batters to get big scores. We just want them to have match-winning scores. We don't want, not every game everyone's going to get 30 or 40, but everyone has to be able to do it. And if they can on their day turn that 30 or 40 into an 80 plus that helps us win the game, then outstanding.
So team selection, you say, is especially in sort of T20 cricket, is very important. The way that you structure the side. You coached Islamabad United, and the structure of the side was quite a lot of all-rounders, the batting depth to allow you to be more aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have that, the idea of just specialist batters, is sort of very much outdated. You have to be multi-skilled. Not everyone can read a pitch to a point where that these 5 bowlers are going to be perfect. So if you've got 6, 7, 8 options that the captain can turn to, you've got two right-handers at the crease. You can bring on your left-arm spinner. You've got off-spinners who, if you get particular matchups, can do a job. They might only be 1 or 2 overs, but that gives the captain the flexibility then at the back end to pick his best bowlers on that day. And that's why I look at it both ways. You've got to cover both areas. You've got to be above par with the bat, and you've got to be below par with the ball. And that's the way we'll be trying to operate.
So you talked about specialist batters. Just for my knowledge, ideally, how many specialist bowlers would you want? Can you afford 3 bowlers, or can you afford 3 bowlers who are just specialist bowlers and not bat that well, or do you go the other way?
No, look, I mean, you can afford 3 specialist bowlers for sure, but they have to be able to have some cricket smarts with the bat. So they don't have to hit the ball out of the park, but they have to be able to get a single, and they have to know, how to work with the guy at the other end, because often that's when the game's on the line. If it's the 20th over and your number 9 comes in, you need to know that he can find a way of getting your batsman on strike. He doesn't have to be a genuine all-rounder, but he has a very important role to play, and that's something that we're going to be continually working on.
I'm just going along with this team selection theme now. As coach, who does deliver the bad news to anybody who's not selected or who's been left out from the squad? Where does that communication come from?
Look, I think this is obviously my first squad, so if players are not involved in the future, then that will come from me. And on a playing day, I will deal with those messages as well. We'll tend to pick the side the night before we train, and I'll pass that on to the players. Those that aren't in future squads, I'll be having those communications, and also the wider squad. We'll be meeting at the NCA after this. I'll be talking with all those players that have a desire to play for Pakistan, and being really clear around the expectations we have. And I've already had a number of those meetings already with players that have reached out and said they want some communication. So I see that a very important part of the coach's role.
So, for instance, XYZ, a player who's not in the squad because of maybe a lower strike rate in the middle overs or a strike rate that's not up to par, you would communicate that to him, and once, say, domestic cricket, or if he's be able to improve that, then he'll come back? Is that the sort of process that you
look, I don't shut the door on anybody, and I think that once you're a good player, you're a good player, but sometimes you need to just stretch yourself a little bit. And I think that's with bat and ball, I'll talk to every player and say, this is the job description, basically. If you want to play for Pakistan in this role, these are the things we need to see. So rather than necessarily what we've seen in the past, it's like everyone can change. And if this is, I'm desperate to play for Pakistan, this is what I want to do, this is what the team requires, then you're right. They can go back to domestic cricket. There's the Shaheen's games. There's all sorts of other matches where they can show that they've got that improvement. But then they also need to be better than the ones that are already there, and to surpass them. So it's a bit of a process.
White ball cricket. It's quite a generic question, but white ball cricket, your coaching philosophy, you've already said 360, but how do you rank the importance with, say, tactics, say, team culture, and then working on actual sort of technical issues that a player has?
Look, I think for me, you've got to understand what the team culture is already, and then try and develop that. And I think, as I said, that always takes time. But I think, firstly, players deserve the right to know what's expected of them. If they're not at the point you want, then what do they need to do to get to that point? So a lot of communication around that. For me, from a technical point of view, that's a lot of my background is around technical coaching. So, but it's also observing a player first before you know when to intervene. But there's no doubt, there are some skills that need to be developed with all of our players, and that's just part of evolution. For me, fielding is critical. In white ball cricket, there's no room in a squad for somebody that can't field. You just can't hide people in the field these days. So that'll be a real push for me.
Right. Coming to the coaching job of Pakistan, what was the first instance of when you sort of thought, yeah, maybe I'll do this? Because I heard rumors that you were approached before too.
Yeah, look, we had a chat maybe a year before. My family situation didn't allow me to move away at that time, so it wasn't something that I'd looked at seriously. My eldest daughter's now gone to university, which helps. But I guess, when there was a shift in terms of, Pakistan, the PCB recognised that they needed to make change around the way that they wanted to play white ball cricket. That was important because, for someone new to come in and make that shift could take time. I think the initial concept had been mooted and there'd been some change in personnel, but probably more a change in style. No doubt they'd gone too far. And I think that, the concept of playing aggressive cricket versus the concept of playing, measured, smart cricket with intent is what makes the difference. So for me, I thought, look, I can add a little bit of structure there. And, I'm pretty good at identifying those that can be successful in white ball cricket. So, and also there's some really good players who probably aren't maximising their talent at the moment, that hopefully we can draw that out as well.
You've been appointed for a couple of years, so you've got a lot of T20 games, you've got a World Cup inside. As the head coach, do you have, I don't know, you have long-term plans or also some short-term plans? Would you like to elaborate on those?
Yeah, so for example, obviously we've got the 2 World Cups, and I know that the one-day World Cup is, slightly outside of that 2-year period, but, I like to work backwards from pinnacle dates. So if we look at the T20, there's say 34 games between now and then. We're going to make sure, 10 games out, we've got our, we know what our playing 11 looks like, or the style of play we want. We know the likely sort of 11, the possible 15, and then replacements in terms of pecking order, because we know that, there's a high attrition rate at times, in T20. If you want to play at a high intensity, there will be attrition. So for me, it's about, and the selection group is around getting those depth charts for each position really clear. So if we have an injury close to the tournament, it's just a straight swap. You don't need to change anything other than, one person. So, and I like to do the same, in one-day cricket as well. Is once again, we've got to work on the way we want to play the game, the way we think we'll be successful in South Africa or in Africa in a couple of years, the type of players we're going to need in those conditions, and then, as I said, work backwards, so that 8 to 10 games before we're really clear around the group of players we're working with.
So you talked about the marriage between being smart and being ultra aggressive. Now, again, this question here is that I worked with a coach who said, okay, you play 50 overs, but you be aggressive, and if you get bowled out for 170, it doesn't matter. If you're batting really well and still not getting really above par, it is of no use to me. Is that a theory that sort of says to you something? Or?
Well, look, absolutely. I think the reason you can bat deep is that, if you lose wickets at certain times, obviously your death phase becomes less. So if you're able to get yourself to a position where you can go harder earlier, you give yourself a better chance of getting well above par. But if you get yourself in trouble, you've still got the players to be able to get you to a score which is competitive. There's no point being 30 short of that or 50 short, because you're just not achieving anything. So you've got to give yourself a chance. So yeah, look, I agree with that to a point for sure. The concept of batting out your overs is only useful if you're actually doing something while you're there. I'd rather be 180 bowled out than 170 for 4. So regardless of where that happens. Yeah.
So before you accepted the job, obviously, I don't know if you talk to people or if you talk to previous coaches that have coached in Pakistan, what feedback or what were you thinking the challenges would be to come into Pakistan and coach the Pakistan team?
Look, I think I've come in sort of eyes wide open in terms of I'm aware of the history. I think it was really important to have some conversations with key personnel and to make sure that we were, on the same page. And the fact that results won't come instantly, and I'm aware of that. And as long as people are aware of that, we will have some ups and downs. But if we're aware of where the pinnacle events are and where we want to peak, there's a process to that. So, I needed to understand that everyone, in key roles were aware of that. Whether that be with the NCA, whether it be with the chairman, whether it be with selectors, whether it be with senior players, we all need to know. We all need to be on the same page in terms of where we want to get to. We might have slightly different ideas around the process, but we need to trust that. So I was really confident after some, number of discussions. It wasn't just one or two, to sort of just question each other around, where we wanted to head to. Because I don't want to do this job for 6 months and make some gains and or have some ups and downs and then move on. I see this as more of a medium-term project, and I also see the role of actually working with players away from tour. It was a critical thing for the PCB, and I actually agreed with it. I don't think you can come in, because there are some significant changes that need to happen with players around, fielding techniques, batting, bowling, approach. Those things can't happen in 3 or 4 days before a series.
Must have been a difficult talk with your family. You're going to stay away for quite a while now.
Look, it has, without doubt, and I couldn't have done this without the support of my kids and my partner. So, they've had to buy into it. They're looking forward to coming to Pakistan as well, and meeting us on the odd tour. It's a family effort.
Tell them Pakistan's got the best food in the world, and they'll rush here.
They'll rush in here now. They're very much looking forward to it.
As a head coach, we have lots of head coaches carry their own support staff. They're very comfortable. Well, it isn't wrong, but they're very comfortable with working with a core group. Are you the same, or you're not that fussed with having particular people with you working in a team?
No, I certainly never sort of carry around a group of support staff. I think because every group you go to is different. So for me, it's around trying to find the right people for the particular role. It's not about me being comfortable. It's about the playing group being comfortable and us being able to provide a support to them. And, when you come to, different cultures, different languages, there are always, you need a combination of people. So that's an important part of the next, few weeks, is making sure we get the right people, but also talking with the players, and existing support staff in terms of where we think the holes are. Recruitment around that is important.
Now, let me take you back to Islamabad United. You just completed your second season. How were the 2 seasons different? Obviously, one, you won the trophy, the second season didn't, but your experience of your season 1 and season 2?
In season 1, we started pretty slow. And then we built momentum at the right time of the tournament, and we had players in form come the business end, and that's kind of what what you're hoping for. And we always talked about trying to play your best game in the final. The second year there was a few more challenges. I don't think I've ever had as many injuries as I've had, not just injuries, but family illnesses, passing. We had to make a huge amount of change. Which we didn't want to make, but we did. But I think actually and obviously we had a bit of a break halfway through, which meant different players came in at the business end. Some came, some left. So it was, as a support staff group, it was quite challenging, and we didn't quite find the form with either the bat or the ball that we needed to at the back end. So we gave ourselves a chance being in the top 2, but I think in the end, the top 2 sides made the final.
And then, you worked with, say, Salman Ali Agha, Shadab Khan, these sort of players who are now with the Pakistan team. Does that relationship now help because of the fact that you have a little history with them?
I think when you know players you've worked with, also the ones you've coached against, and built a bit of a relationship with them is really helpful. I know how Salman Aliaga trains. I know how he works, how he thinks. Same with Shadab. So I feel like I can, build that relationship earlier and try and transition that to what Pakistan needs. But sometimes the more you know about a player and the more they know about you, you got to work harder. I think the needs of Pakistan are quite different than the needs of Islamabad United. But I think in those two players, you've got two who are very passionate about Pakistan cricket.
You talked about Salman Aliaga. He currently is the captain now. How does the coach and captain work, especially during a match day? Is it the captain now left to his authority to you're in the field, you have the 11, you now make the decisions, and we've worked on tactics and everything beforehand, or your input during the game is also ongoing?
Look, we do a lot of our work before the game. We have a lot of meetings. We talk about things, and then I talk before we leave the hotel as a group. And then when we arrive at the ground, it's Salman's time, and I'm there to support. So without doubt, I'm going around talking to players. There'll often be some interchanges during the game, but it's not about coaching from the sideline or captaining from the sideline. I trust Salman. I trust the leadership group to problem solve out in the middle. And I'm there to help if required. I'm certainly not someone who'll be sending out lots of messages, but if I do send something out, it's an option. It's not a dictatorship. And if they've thought of it before and they decide to do something else, I've got no problem with that.
How closely do you look at it, and how big are you on matchups and having a particular bowler to pick particular batter?
Look, it's one piece of the puzzle. It's not the only one. I'm aware of matchups, but sometimes when you're out there, from a batting point of view, you actually feel it against someone else, and that's the time you've got to go. We saw, Hesson Nawaz against Rashad. It might not statistically match up, but he was feeling it, and it was the time where he felt he could get us some real momentum. So he did, and we back our players to make decisions on the field. And same with the ball. There were matchups. Salman came on to two left-handers. But those are things that he's got to be able to read out in the middle. We're not, as soon as this guy comes in, you have to bowl this person. Every game's different. Conditions change.
Just as a layman, a novice, what would ideally for you as a head coach be the ideal T20 game for your team, with what the plans that you've set or the way that you want the team to play a match of 40 overs?
Oh, look, I think with the bat, once again, your top order, if someone gets in, they play a match-winning innings. So, it's not about an anchor innings or anything. It's like if it's your day, you play an innings that dictates the outcome of the game. You do that, then the rest of the guys can just play cameos around you, and then you're going to get well above par. And that's the way I'd like from a batting perspective. From a bowling point of view, we pick people for different jobs. We pick people to dominate the power play. For me, it's about being smart. So some days your spinners will be the wicket takers. Other days they're going to have to try and control. And for me, it's about, if I can see that our bowling attack identify those moments and know when to push in terms of attack a little bit more and know when to just try and control the game, for me that's important. And then from a fielding point of view, it's about trying to be special in the field. If we do that, then the little things take care of themselves.
Now, just on that subject, you've coached for so long now. Is there one particular, a couple of instances where you look back and say, I'm really proud of this, a turnaround in a player or a turnaround within a group of players, something that still sort of you look back and think, well, I did well there?
I look at probably one thing stands out. He was one of your co-commentators, Martin Guptill. Leading up to the 2015 World Cup, he wasn't in the touch that he would want to be. And I just remember us, sort of trying to remove a bit of baggage around the tournament, trying to get him to, just focus on what he was doing. And I just remember a few sessions that we had where it clicked. leading up to that game against the West Indies, where the quarter final. Just remember we had an hour in the indoor centre, and at the end of it, you could just see him puff his chest out, and he was ready to go. And then the next day we saw, was it 230 something in a knockout game, and that was a moment where I was immensely proud of Guppy in terms of the fact he just put in a performance that we were all delighted for, and no one really saw it coming. That was the exciting thing.
Now you spent a couple of seasons there in the HPL PSL. Just overall, Pakistan, the facilities and the sort of the cricketing structure here, as in the ground and everything that goes with it. Are you impressed with that, or do you think the facilities are top notch, or you still think there's a little bit of development needed?
Oh, I think around the cricket side, the facilities at the main grounds are good. I think it's the other facilities around trainings and things like that. The NCA has got great bones, and I know Akib Javed has got some great ideas and plans around turning that into something special. So looking forward to being part of that, because I think once you get the training facilities to a high level, then the expectations we can ask of players is much higher. When those aren't up to speed, it makes it difficult to get your work done. So really looking forward to seeing that evolve, and therefore the quality of trainings will be far better.
And just on that aspect, as a head coach here in Pakistan, will you be looking at sort of maybe scouting players and looking around the domestic circuit where the players are developing, and maybe just be able to help them as well, the wider, we talked about the wider group, but the real wide group where your first class cricketers come in?
Yeah, look, that's certainly part of a head coach's role. Pakistan's a huge country, so I'm not going to be able to get around everything, but there'll be some identified groups of players where I'll be very keen to go and have a look and talk and meet players. And once again, just make sure there's a real pathway in terms of this is what it looks like if you want to play for Pakistan. And, anybody who's able to show these skills in any particular role, will be considered. And, we want that funnel. We want players that all turn up well aware. They're all great athletes. They're all trained very well. They're good in the field. They can play a particular role, whether it be with bat and ball. Ideally, they're multi-skilled, or they're particularly good at one skill and then an outstanding fielder. So there are certain aspects that make up white ball teams, good teams around the world. So, I want a funnel of high quality players. So looking forward to, seeing some sprout.
So this whole process now, the fans, the cricketing fraternity, they're only asking for probably consistency with the team, and also one day, well, recently it's not been great, but they would turn up. Pakistan team are known for this. They turn up and blow you away, and the other day they'd be sort of go out with a whimper. Now all that process that you have explained, is that working towards consistency?
Yeah, I think if you don't have a consistency of approach, then it's just good luck on any given day. And I think that, the challenge, as I said the other day, is probably a good example. It's not always going to go your way. You're 2 for 5. If you haven't got a clear approach, then you're going to end up well under par and potentially struggle to win the game. Now, we don't want every game to be like that, but the reality is you've got to have a number of different opportunities or points of attack to win the game. You can't just have 1 or 2, and that's with bat and ball. So for me, it's about, as I said, having that process in place, giving players the trust that as long as they're trying to do the right thing by the team, then we have a lot more patience. If players are not are more self-absorbed or trying to do something that suits them, I have less patience. So it's easy, and therefore everyone knows they're all trying to do the same thing. So that will provide consistency of approach, and in time, that will provide consistency of performance.
Absolutely, consistency is key. With all this, as a developing player, what would Mike Hesson tell him? A player who wants to develop his white ball skills or the white ball career, A couple of what would just be an advice that Mike Hesson would give him?
I would say understand your game very well. I think that if you understand your game and your strengths, then you can make any game work. It's those players that are always searching for something else, don't quite know what they're good at. Those are the ones that will just go around in circles, always trying to reinvent themselves. I want players that are problem solvers, so they can come out different situations, they can navigate the side to a win. And that to me is more important than a particular technique or shot.
Just last couple of questions. One training session that sort of I got to observe from, I didn't get close, but it looked as if it was really targeted. You're sort of giving the batters a certain amount of target to get, and the bowlers also. So your training is very match specific as well. It's not just turning up and getting through your process. It's very match specific. Yeah,
we try and create scenarios and have different times where players can potentially work on a bit of skill or technique. But when you come into a competition net, there's scenarios, and as you said, it's specific. If you bat in the middle overs, we're using balls that'll be a similar age, facing the types of bowlers you're likely to face. So then you can start to apply your game plan as best you can. So, and we like to put our bowlers under pressure as well. I think as a bowling group, when we've been put under pressure, we haven't quite fronted up yet. So, if we can't always do that in games, we want to try and do that in practice as much as we can.
And lastly, the final question, once Mike Hesson is hopefully here for a long time, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 2 years, but once Mike Hesson walks away or goes away from Pakistan cricket, what would he have wanted to achieve and be able to then look back at, I did what I wanted to do here? What outlines that?
Look, I'd like the Pakistan public to go, hey, this is a great team to watch. This is a team that we have a huge amount of respect for. Every game they put their body on the line and give it everything. And we know that if they don't win, they're going to make it incredibly hard for the opposition to win. And I think if I can leave that sort of legacy, because I think when you leave, if when you leave things fall over, then you haven't done a great job. For me, it's about building that succession planning as well, so that for those that come and follow, they can sort of hopefully continue on a good model.
Thank you very much, Mike. I think Pakistan cricket should be in great hands. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for watching this PCB podcast. Hope you really enjoyed it, and until next time, it's a goodbye.